It's time for some pure truth. And with that being said, there he's smiling if you're watching on YouTube. It's David Swan. And just to put this into context, people, I'm kind of cruising around doing podcast, announcing stuff. And then I get this message, which I love to get on Instagram from David saying, we were at the trade show, the PGA trade show, and our training aid just turned heads all over the show. Are you keen to see one? And I was like, okay, I love a good training aid. Well, it arrived, and I have been like a child. David, I've been like a kid since I've had your training aid. In fact, it's living on my putting mats, which is in the next door room. So thank you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. It's an honor to be here. Yeah.
Well, look, it's the honor that you would send this thing to me because, even though I'm in broadcast, I'm a teacher deep down. And the teacher deep down has this mission of bringing not just good information to the learner, helping that learner to get that, like, aha, I get it. It makes sense moments.
Mm.
What you guys are about in one sort of stop, these training aids are just bringing real truth to improve putting without a shadow of a doubt.
Oh, well, thank you. And that's a huge compliment, because when we set out on this journey 5+ years ago, that was one of the underlying, pillars. We wanted to bring something that made sense to people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And whether you're an 8-year-old, a 30 handicap, or a tour player, right, that this gives you immediate, precise feedback that you can understand.
Yeah.
And I think we've accomplished that.
Well, it's amazing. So many things. I don't want to say that you can cheat training aids, but you can. This one, it is very truthful. I mean, when I got on it the first time, in fact, my daughter was on it first, and she was like, whoa, okay, this is what I understand about eye line. And then when I got over it, I was like, wowza, I have to get myself into a different posture or athletic posture to hit the spot. But anyway, more about that in a minute. Let's put you into context. I'm getting my cart in front of my horse. Tell the folks about you, how you came to where you are, and of course, what was the inspiration for getting into the golf training aid market?
Well, and this, I think, in many ways has been helpful in the journey, and in some ways from a marketing perspective maybe has hurt. I'm not in the golf world. Right? I was a former college basketball coach. I've been a tinker my whole life. I am a struggling golfer like 99% of the world, right? And I think throughout my life, it's either a blessing or a curse. I've looked at lots of things and said, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whether it's in coaching or developing businesses. And that's really how this all came about. I mean, the long story is my golf game was 10 years ago, just became terrible. I mean, I couldn't break 100, right? I had kids, I wasn't playing, and all my buddies are really, really good golfers. And, it might have been because of my personality, but they were like, okay, do we really want to play with this guy that is? So I was like, okay, this is enough. Mm-hmm. I went and got a fantastic coach, a guy named Joe Grupner from the Minneapolis area, just an unbelievable teacher. He's one of the best, and he's a good golf mind. He's a great golf mind, but just a fantastic teacher. And I really said, I'm going to get better. And the first thing I did, I'll try to shorten up the story. In Minnesota, Wisconsin, you hit inside 6 months of the year, mm-hmm. and hard on your body. So I said, okay, I'm going to build the best training aid mat in the world. And we spent a lot of time and money. We named it Zero Impact, and we built this fantastic hitting mat, except it cost almost $1,000 to make one. So it just not, we couldn't market it. And then we were on the driving range one day with alignment sticks, and Joe and I were like arguing, are these two parallel? Are they, what target? And Joe's like, why don't you figure out a better way to do this? So we came up with this. Our first product is called Pure Align, which is this set of tremendous alignment sticks. And it's all 90 degrees and offsets, et cetera. Right now, we're not making any money on them because the costs are so high. So we've sold like 1,000 sets, but we don't really talk about it until we can get it to where we make money.
Mhm.
So then that leads me into the putting. And I was down, and putting had always fascinated me because you could spend days online listening and watching people that have completely different philosophies, right?
Mhm.
I mean, whether it's arc or eyes or blah, 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 blah. And I was down at Babcock Ranch outside of Fort Myers one day, and there were at least 20 guys on the putting green, and almost all of them had a different aid or were snapping a chalk line or setting up tees. And I just was looking at it going, this is really weird, right? And I'm an inventor. I'm a thinker. So I have a notebook next to my bed, and I woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and I started drawing this putting trainer.
Mhm.
I have no idea why. And I took it to a welder, and I wish I'd have kept all of the prototypes because it's well over 500.
Oh, really?
And then I don't know, do you know Tommy Stankowski at all?
Yeah.
Tommy's Paul's brother. So I'm down in Fort Myers, and we've got like prototype number 6, and it like broke in the airplane or something, and I duct taped it together. And I see this guy over there hitting, he's got a ponytail. I'm like, wow, that guy's got a beautiful golf swing. So
Yeah.
I go to start chatting with him, and he comes over. He said, let me take, and he hits like 3 putts, and he looks at me and he said, I think this is the best putting aid I've ever seen in my life, and maybe the best golf trainer. And he wanted to buy it. I'm like, this is a piece of junk. So that was like, and Tommy, when we've over the 5 years been like frustrated and is this really going to work? Tommy's like, David, you got to keep doing this. And Tommy still has like prototype 100 in his garage
Mhm.
that he putts with every day. So that was the beginning. And then I literally bought 5 3D printers. And for almost 5 years, we were running those constantly, building prototypes, going out and testing them, sending them to colleges, et cetera. And it morphed into what we have here.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. I have it. Yes, I've been teaching golf since 1995. All right, so I've been around the block. And the challenge for the teacher to me is always to turn something cerebral into a feel.
Yeah.
Understanding, and you got to communicate in a way that the student gets it. As a coach, you know that too. You can have the best play draw. If it doesn't settle, it's not getting pulled off under pressure.
Right.
And so, as far as training aids go, I love them because they help to take a thought into a feel, and it gives you something that you can kind of know, but then search for when you're out there practicing and playing. But every training aid to me has its limitations. And the one thing I always look for is portability. I love the fact that you can hit balls using it. And then I love the fact that it's not screw upable. Because I can't tell you, I'm the typical guy because I get a lot of training aids from people. And I, I'm not going to read the manual. I'm sorry. I'm just one of those guys. And I'm
Right.
emblematic of the golfing public at large. We get it. We want to putt better. We're like, all right, taking this thing out. I took this out of its cool green bag and its very nice box. And here it is, folks. It's very light. It's if you should watch on YouTube, but for the audio folks, it's 2 horizontal bars with a movable basically ball position aid right in the middle of it. It's got a couple strings, one for stroke height, which I love, the other for eye line. And then it's got these 2 dangly little goodies, I'll call them yellow, that creates like a start gate. And I looked at this, I'm like, okay, here's a very light portable training aid. I can't screw it up. It hits every major putting fundamental I can think of. And then it's so versatile because there are these 2 rails you can put in the middle of it that you can build the shape of your arc too if you're looking for some sort of an arc a training mechanism. And I was like, holy cow. And then when I started spending time on it, because it also has levels at the top over here, if you're looking, you can see. Imagine a water level, right? Like you got on the green. And you can see too if you got this thing level, because if you're not, then you start a pin on line, it's not going to go through your gate properly, even though you strike it well. So I'm like, everything has been thought of. And yet somehow it's portable, it's light, and you can't screw it up. I mean, bravo is all to you.
Well, thank you. And You know, I don't think we took any concept that hadn't been out there for maybe 100 years,
Yeah.
but we I bought every putting trainer that was on the market, and
Yeah.
I studied every drill, and I was like, what are these trying to accomplish, right? And how can we make it more precise and put it all in one package? And it was funny because I would, I'd be traveling for business in California, and I'd just walk in unannounced to a pro shop, and 99% of the people were just great, right? Some of them were like, hey, you're not a golf putting guy, what are you doing, right?
Uh-huh.
And they would go, oh, this is really cool, but if you could do this. And I was like, okay, we will figure out how to do that. And they would kind of laugh and go, well, no one has ever done that. You can't combine all these things. So the other thing, Mark, that I did not want to tell people how to putt, right? I am not a putting expert. I'm not a putting guru. I haven't I haven't spent my life studying putting. So we wanted to build a machine, no matter what your philosophy is, you could use this to improve what you want to work on.
Yeah.
And so we're not here to say you have to have your eyes here, you have to have your stroke here, etc. But the machine can be set up in an infinite amount of ways, right? To work on what you believe as a coach and what your student needs to work on.
Mm-hmm. And now I'm going to pivot back to the word truth, because your company, I guess, is Pure Truth, and then you've got the training aids. This one, the granddaddy, is the Pure Golf Truth Trainer.
Right.
To me, truth is uncomfortable. I think to most people, truth is something we kind of listen to, but we don't really want to pay attention to it. Truth is not nice to hear. Sometimes we feel kind of insulted, but the reality of it is, and I'm looking for you to build on this, coach. The reality of it is, real improvement only happens when you're outside your comfort zone, and you only get to move there if you're getting the truth, and then you are digesting and owning the real truth to it. Your take?
We for 4 years called this the peer putting system. I trademarked it, etc. And I went out. I'm not going to use his name because I don't know. It's not embarrassing, but with a gentleman who had played in multiple Ryder Cups.
Yeah.
And I made sure the thing was exactly level. I was kind of nervous, etc. And he was putting on it. And of course, he wanted to move it to the hardest setting, right? Because why not, right? And I was like, okay, this is going to be a little humbling. And he couldn't get it through the gates.
Okay.
You could tell he was kind of looking at me like, okay, yeah, whatever. And I said to him, the machine doesn't lie, right? The machine doesn't lie. So I went home and I was like thinking about that. And then a couple weeks later, I was on the putting green and there were some high school age kids. They were really good golfers. They were having a putting contest, for dollars or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they walked over to me and were like, what is this thing? So I showed them, and I went it was like 100 degrees. I went in to get a drink. I came back and they were all playing with it, except one guy was standing over to the side. And you could tell he was like, I don't need this, right? Mm-hmm. So we kind of egged him on a little bit, and he started using it. He couldn't get it through the gates.
All right.
And you could just see in his eyes, like, this is a piece of crap. No one is going to tell me that I can't putt. And his one buddy in his Jack Nicklaus voice goes, you can't handle the truth. And I was like, pada, right? The little 16-year-old snot-nosed kid. I was like, that is the truth, right? And that's why. And so we changed the name to the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So here's the thing. I want to dive into this a little bit. And the people who download this, aside from them getting one, which I would recommend, we'll talk about that in a minute. But just the fundamentals you address. So I want to start with eyeline, because I've always believed I was over the ball. And I, as a young kid, I never really had lessons. I read everything I learned. Now later in life, I get to talk to all the great minds, because now that I hold a microphone, I'm somewhat
right.
And I was always that kid who would drop the ball down, the golf ball, from the bridge of my nose, and it would land on top of the ball if I was in position. But you know what? Looking back now, David, I could cheat that so badly because you could drop the ball and it could twist out of your fingers or whatever. When I got over this, and I'm going to hold the aid up so you see there's two strings, there's blue and there's white. If you want your eyes over the ball, because they're adjustable, you can work them in both fashions. You get the ball underneath those two lines so you only see one string. And to get in there, it wasn't just my eye line that changed. I saw the alignment of the putter head differently. And I felt how I moved pressure in my feet differently. And all of a sudden, stability that I've been teaching and putting for donkey's years, I could feel my body wake up to keep me in this place where it was eyes directly over the ball. Now, if you want to adjust it, you can move these strings to create an environment to get eyes inside or wherever you want. But I was like, it's more than just eyes over the ball. This is dynamically athletic, ready posture. Even though we're standing still, we're not like amoebas just there. We are awake and we are using our muscles to be in position. Your take, please.
My analogy is this. If your grandma and my grandma were sitting around arguing about making strawberry jam,
okay,
there should be 4 grams of sugar or 8 grams of sugar, right? Mm-hmm. And they talked about this for an hour, and then they went and made the jam and picked the sugar up with their fingers and threw it in, and we're like, that's close enough.
Yeah.
Well, those two things don't work, right?
Yeah.
And I have the utmost respect in the world for guys who have dedicated their life to coaching golf, right? So this is not, but I have had thousands of teachers on this. And the first question I ask them is, where are your eyes?
Yeah.
And they're not like, it's over the ball. It's on the inside, right? And then I ask them, how do you know?
Yeah.
And then the question, well, I drop the ball from my nose or I look at a mirror. Well, and I'm not there. There's thousands of mirrors out there. If you take the best, I have literally taken a mirror like a real mirror,
mm-hmm.
and you take a perfect mirror with no sun, perfectly flat, you can get your eyes maybe within a couple centimeters.
Yeah.
Right? You just can't, and that's perfect conditions, right? With this, you're within a millimeter. There's no way to cheat this.
Yeah.
No way to cheat it.
And it's not just eyes over the ball, it's the eye line as well, because,
Yes.
It's tilting one way or the other, your body follows your eyes. They're the windows to your soul. So if you're tilted one way or the other, you're going to proliferate some sort of stroke that probably matches that. Or you say to force one or other, mid-swing adjustment to get the ball online. Moving along, then, a lot of people talk about the path of the stroke, one of the fundamentals of the ball's journey and how it moves. But not very many people talk about the elevation of the putting stroke. Because it's going to be low and swing a little high and swing a little low.
Yeah.
And no one talks about its relationship to the ground, angle of attack, if you're a golf information.
Yeah.
This thing, because you can, with that lower blue cable over there, you can set it at a certain height so the blade can't take off too high off the ground, either going back and or going through. And I will tell you this, I have called the best. I've seen Tiger, Rory, you name them, at their very best. And when they're hitting putts well, that blade never swings high off the ground. Yet I see so many amateurs, the wrist flick, it picks off the ground, they raise the thing up, whatever's happening. But the blade is up and down like a jack in the box, as opposed to sweeping gently along the turf with a little up and down.
Absolutely. And this concept, we originally had 2 stagnant strings. And I feel bad. I can't remember. I was out at the college golf show a couple years ago, and one of the coaches came by and said, it would be really cool if you could adjust the strings. And I said, why? And he said, because then you could work on your putter head height.
Mm-hmm.
It's like brilliant, right? So you could take this, if you want it high and low, right? You can adjust however you feel you should putt and what you need to work on. So yeah, that was something I did not think of.
You're too modest. But again, you were comfortable enough with the truth that you would step outside your comfort zone with
Yeah,
baby here and make the modification.
yeah,
It truly is a stop shop because, starting the ball online is a function of path and moreover face alignment. And these little dangly goodies, you see, I've got lots of gates that I use, and the people watching on YouTube, you see these move. And a putting gate that you stick into the ground, if you're crooked, the ball hits the gate and doesn't go through the gap. But these, because these little goodies, and they're movable, you can make the gate wider if you want. So I can move it to a different place.
yeah.
These, even though you might be slightly off kilter in terms of the path of the stroke, the ball will still go through the gates, but you'll know that you've missed because that little dangly thingy, whatever you call it,
It's called the truth gate.
the truth gate. Well, yeah, the truth gate.
You obviously didn't read the directions.
I told you. Well, look, the truth gate lets you not feel like a failure, but it lets you know, hold on, you're not there yet. And that's
Yeah.
what I love about it as well, because my challenge as a golf teacher, because I'm sure you've been there as a coach, you got to shoot 10 free throws in a row before you leave, or you're going to make 10 5-footers, whatever, going along, and then you miss one, and then you got to start over. By the end of it all, if someone's missing, you lose them mentally.
Yeah.
These little truth gates, because they allow the ball to go through there and still go in the hole if it's decent enough line, they don't get you disenchanted and starting to feel ill about yourself.
Well, Mark, this is right. We could sit and talk for hours about this, but I am a believer based on science that to learn optimally, you need to be in that 70% success rate,
Okay.
right? If you're at 50%, like you said, you feel crappy about yourself, right? If
Yep.
you're at 95%, you're not really learning anything. So one of the factors in building this, but it goes hand in hand with anyone can use it, is we can, and I wrote this down because I wanted to get the numbers right here. You can adjust these gates where they have a mark, and it also includes moving the ball pad back, right? The ball pad is back. So yeah, just show people that. And there are little dots on the rails, right?
You can move this up and down so you can be closer to the gate or farther away. Yeah.
So we can move those from 5 degrees margin of error off the club face to 0.27 degrees margin of error.
Holy, that's perfection.
All in the same machine. And I think adults don't want to admit this because we all like little games. But what I have found with kids, teaching kids putting is maybe the worst thing I've ever tried to do in my life, right? They get bored. But the kids want to gamify this.
Yeah.
So what we tell them is make 3 in a row and you can move it back a big dot, which is 4 inches. Make 3 in a row, we'll move it back, then we'll move the gates in. Then we'll so we have the pink gates, which we call the fat gates. Probably not politically correct, but I'm fat, so I can. But the fat gates, the pink gates are even harder. So you can keep, and the kids, they want to get to the professional setting, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to let them get there until they make 3 in a row. And so we're varying the practice, but we're really challenging them, right? And that's once again the key. I can put an 8-year-old on here. I can put Scotty Scheffler on here, and they can all learn, right, and get to their level of challenge.
Give me those numbers again. So 5-degree dispersion in terms of the ball start line to 0.2 what?
0.27, which is equivalent. Now, you're also, it would be much harder because you'd have to hit it harder, but that's equivalent to making a 43-foot putt.
Wow.
And the other thing that people quickly find out, if I want to put it at the 3rd dot, which is, 10 inches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making a putt through those fat gates. So, well, let's say we put it at the 4th dot, because that's 0.35 degrees margin of error. Well, if I'm making a 4-foot putt, that is a lot easier than trying to hit a 12-foot putt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because it's simply a matter of stroke length, right? And the more stroke length we have to generate that speed, the more margin of error we have. Mm-hmm. So people are like, wow, there's a reason, and there's lots of factors that go into a 15-foot putt, right? There can be grain and reading and blah, blah, blah. But it's really hard to control your putter face. And when we were developing this, I mean, we played around with lasers. We played around with developing a machine that would say you're 0.45 degrees closed or whatever. And first of all, to do that accurately is cost prohibitive. But if you told me your putter face is open 0.5 degrees, I'd look at you and go, well, what does that mean? Right? Is that good? Is that bad? I have no idea. And with this, with the gates, right, you get that immediate feedback. And if I told you the amount of money we spent developing those gates, you would question my sanity. But we went through hundreds of iterations, and what we wanted to do was something that clicked a little bit so you could hear it. And it also dangled long enough where you didn't have to pull your head and see what happened, but that it also had some substance to it. So that just the physics of the gates were very, very difficult. And, you know, paces, it depends how hard you hit the gate, but on a 10-foot putt, the gates only slow down the ball a couple inches. So even if you miss it, you can still get a very good read on what your pace was. And it's not jamming up the ball, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, folks, for the audio listeners, I'm holding up. These are the thin gates, the yellow ones, the fat gates.
And those actually glow in the dark. So you practice in the dark.
I mean, it's tiny, and they're very lightweight too. Look, the teacher in me, and if anyone's listened to this podcast at length, they've heard me say that, and I'm a Bob Jones disciple, and Jones said the key to golf was to turn 3 strokes into 2. And the easiest way to do that is close to the target. You know, avoiding 3 putts or avoiding chip and 2 putts or whatever your level of the game is. But then again, I love this because everyone can putt, but not everyone can putt when there's pressure up. And now when you have these gates, even though they let you succeed, and I use that term loosely because it's not stopping the ball, it's letting you know, hold on, I might be practicing, but I'm not completely on point. So there still is some work for me to do. Because I've had thousands of clients in my day where it's like, I've got this. And then I get a text message the following day, I can't play. It's because they've been practicing and they've seen some results go in, but they haven't necessarily really changed what they're doing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, we developed, and I'll hold it up here. We developed this smaller version called the Prepare, and we did that simply for the college players who, you know, the trainer, right? It sets up in 20 seconds, but you couldn't slip it in your golf bag, right? And these guys wanted something really portable. And so what this does is it works. This is solely a start line and club face, right? You move the back and it has the thin gates and the fat gates, right? But this is in the feedback I have, you know, from really, really good golfers who are using this is they're amazed. There are days they set this up and they're pushing it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then 3 days later, they're pulling it a little bit, right? And I mean, who knows why? Maybe the way they slept. I mean, there's a million factors, right? But this, and we call it the Prepare because it is for that pre-round preparation, right? I'm going to go hit 10, 15 putts, but this is going to give me absolute unequivocal feedback on what I'm doing with my start line on that day.
Okay, audio listeners, if you heard me, I was unzipping the bag because the truth is my eldest daughter Isabel absconded with and I've got it back now, and it's so portable. It's very lightweight. You can extend it real easily. There's little toggles that keep it in position, but all you do is just fold it up and then you set it up and you're on your way. It's super easy to use. You can't screw it up. And to your point, in terms of preparing to go and play, you may as well prepare perfectly, because the round of golf isn't going to be perfect. But if you're preparing in an imperfect environment, you could be training something for the day that's upcoming.
Yes. No, absolutely. I have a question for you. I have a couple questions. What do you think would happen with the handicaps in the world if we all had to finish our putts.
They would go up exponentially.
They would go up. I think for a 10 to 15 handicapper, I think they would go up a stroke and a half at least.
Oh, if not more. If not more.
Yeah.
And I would say this on the other side of your coin, if people had to get good inside of 8 feet, their handicaps would plummet.
They'd plummet.
And then the unwritten thing about all of this, now I'm getting preachy like the teacher, is that if you can make those putts, it takes the pressure off your chipping and pitching game. You don't feel
okay, so you stole my next question.
We'll have a go.
You're a lot smarter than I am, evidently. So if you and I are standing in the fairway 135 degrees out with a pitching wedge in our hand.
135 degrees or yards?
135 yards, I'm sorry. 135 yards out with a pitching wedge in our hand. And the green is surrounded by sand.
Uh-huh.
And I know if I hit it in the sand, I'm screwed, right? There's no way in the world I can get up and down. And you're standing there and you're a great sand player. And you know, if you hit it in the sand, it isn't that big a deal. What is the difference between our success and our mentality between me and you in the same position in the fairway?
It's like a chasm, and I'll build on that because you're so right. Let's go down the rabbit hole a little bit. You know, our swing is related to a swing. You just think of any swing, and a swing works well because it has a hinge, and that hinge has the ability for things to move around in a stable fashion. But if you lock up that hinge, then something has to move for the swing to fulfill its purpose. And tension is the biggest wrecker of swings in the world. And if you're over the ball going, if I miss this target, then I'm cooked, there's very, very little chance you're going to make a free pass at it from the fairway.
And so this moves into putting, where you and I are both 35 feet from the hole. And I'm sitting there going, if this thing isn't a gimme, I'm screwed.
Exactly.
Right? If I leave this thing 4.5 feet from the cup, and you're like, yeah. So if I leave it 5 feet from the cup, it isn't going to matter. I'm still going to make it, right? Those are what you're talking about, right? At a closer level. And our perfection tools are not just for 3, 4, 5 foot putts. But the reality is, if you know you are going to make your 5 foot putts, the world changes for you on the green.
Preach,
right?
brother.
It absolutely changes.
Oh, you're preaching. I'll take that further because, look, we play on an imperfect surface, even though we're trying to be pure. And so there's tilt on the green, left and right, up and down, whatever the case might be. So it's very rare that you'll find just a dead straight putt.
Yeah.
What this will do, because I would say the lion's share of golfers I see, even into the pros, and that's with the proliferation of aim point we've seen now, are people under aim for the influence of the slope and the speed of the green.
Yeah.
If you're practicing on this and you're just trying to start the ball through your gates and you aiming it at some hole from 15 feet, you're going to see quickly enough that, hold on a second, I'm not aiming far enough to the left or whatever it might be. And so all of a sudden it opens up this whole new world of improvement because you're like, dang, from this sort of range and that look and this speed of green, I've got to give it a whole lot more than what I was thinking. Because if there's something, David, that grinds my gears, because we've recently had, we have all sorts of statistic guys on the show, and they were talking about probability, and players should hit the ball inside 20 feet like so many times because those are opportunities for birdies. I'm like, I can point out thousands of golfers who would never make a 20-footer in a round of golf, let alone 5.
Right.
Because they're all misreading greens and they're not starting the ball high enough. So all of a sudden, when you get to this place, and you're gonna be like, now I'm seeing the line, I'm realizing the influence. Now I start the ball down my line, it's through my truth gates, and I've hit a quality putt, but it's missed. And like, maybe I've got to adjust my read, and it's not necessarily my mechanics. So we're blame, and so it's allowing us really to improve as well.
Yeah. 100% on board.
Okay. No, so I was way too wordy there, and I did the whole thing. As far as the putting goes, I'm interested to know, because you said you were not playing very well, and then you got into the golf training aids business. After using these things, I'm certain your scores have improved. Am I right?
Well, I got down to, and this is humbling because I went from not being able to break 100 to I was pretty consistently hovering around a 9 and I think that's pretty good for a guy that didn't grow up golfing and, has bad hip flexors and all of those things, right? And we all wanna play better, right? My game from 20 to 60 yards is not real good. I think that's probably my Achilles heel, and it just takes time and practice, which I don't spend enough on. But yeah, got to where I was respectable, right? And I think the other funny thing, I was thinking about this before our talk, is like, if you play in a scramble or some sort of team event or whatever, what do everyone's sitting around waiting for the prizes, getting food and beverage. And people don't sit there and go, man, we drove the ball 306. They either, the winners go, we made our putts.
Exactly.
And the guys that, think they should have won, they're like, can you believe that 4 of us missed that 6-foot putt? I mean, that's what
and we used that mulligan on top of that and still missed.
right. Yeah, exactly. How did we miss it 8 times?
Yeah.
So I think is driving distance important, is greens and regular. I think, but the bottom line is, for the average golfer in the world, which is what, a 14 handicap, if you make those 4 to 6 foot putts, you play out of your mind. And if you miss them, you don't feel very good about yourself.
I'm going to throw a couple of anecdotes at you. Forgive me if you've heard them on the Mark Tribe. First off, if you make 5 on every hole you play, if you're a 100 shooter, if you make 5s on every hole, you're going to shoot 90. And 5 is as simple as being on a green in 3 strokes and then 2 putting.
Yep.
So you 2 putt 18 holes, you're on every green in 3, you're going to shoot 90. Now think about that. If you just on the par 3s get on the green in 2 and you 2 putt those, all of a sudden 90 goes to 86.
Yeah.
And then if you get on a few par 5s in 2, let's make it 2, 86 becomes 84. But the common denominator here is on the green in 3. That's 60 to 20-yard shot that you're talking about. I'm expecting a training aid, by the way. And then you just make sure that you take no more than 2 putts. 3-putt avoidance to me is a crucial statistic, no matter your skill station in the game.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think if you were going to, if we're talking 80-foot putts, that's probably an outlier. But if you were going to look at 3-putt avoidance, it is not the fact that we're leaving our first putt 15 feet from the hole. It's that we're leaving our first putt 5 feet from the hole, and we're not, and our buddies, or this far, and they're like, that's 3 feet. We're not going to give it to you, right? It goes back to, if we stop giving putts, it would be amazing how much more we wanted to become a better. Yeah, we focused on our putting.
You're preaching truth, Reverend Swan. Okay.
Thank you.
I think the folks are salivating to figure out how to get these. You've got the little guy, the Truth Prepare. Portable, very easy. You can take it with you, prepare for your rounds, just working on start lines and stuff. Or you can get the Granddad, and that's the whole thing where you can work on all of the technique. Again, mine lives on my putting mat in the house. Tell folks where they go to get these, please.
Well, our website is pur.golf. So it's not .com, it's pur.golf. And you can order them, and we haven't talked about this. Let's figure out a promo code, and I'll give people 25% off because they've sat through this. If they've lasted this long, they deserve a how about Mark 24 will be
how about we just make it on the mark?
Well, it's got to be under seven digits, and that's too many.
So what's the discount you're offering?
25%.
Just make it Mark 25.
Mark 25. Okay, Mark 25. Go to the website pur.golf, and we will ship it out the next day.
Fantastic. And folks, they do come the next day. Trust me. When I was texting David, I'm like, may I see one before we feature it? He goes, sure, it'll be in your mail tomorrow. And it was.
Yeah.
It was actually a year before I got home from a PGA Tour event. David, it's marvelous. You're killing multiple birds with one stone. It's easy to use, and I dare say it's genius. And you're onto something. Even it's if people took putting seriously, they will notice their game improving. But the good news is the people who listen to this podcast are informed, so I'm sure that they'll have a listen.
Hey, and maybe you can edit this out, but there's one other thing I wanted to ask you.
Editing. This is all about truth. Go.
Okay. So I'm a coach, right? So when I used to be bored, I'm not bored anymore. I would stop and watch youth softball practices, right? And like, okay. So when I was working on developing this and hitting golf balls, I decided to track what teachers were teaching.
Okay.
I would kind of be a stalker from afar, right? And so I tracked over 3 years, 470 hours of instruction.
Wow. Okay.
So here's a quiz for you.
Yes.
What percentage of time was spent with a driver in your hand?
Well, when did you do the study? Because I find that golf is a very fad business and stuff.
It was over 3 years, and I stopped doing it about a year and a half ago. So
I would say with a driver, you'd be at least 60%.
yeah, so I'm looking at the numbers here. So I was at about 160 hours, so about 35% with solely a driver.
Okay.
And you're right, it's probably gone up.
Mm-hmm.
How much time do you think was spent chipping instruction?
That's not very much at all. 5.
You're close. It was 8.
Right.
And most of these were in group lessons, but now we get to the big kahuna here. How much time was spent on putting instruction?
It would be abysmal. 3%.
Okay, so it was 6 hours total, and 5 hours and about 15 minutes of that was group putting lessons.
Oh my goodness.
In 470 hours, I saw 3 people taking a lesson on their putting for like 15-minute swaps, right? And that to me is amazing. And that really like got me going, okay, we need to create something. And I'm not saying we should not, because if you work with this machine with your student, they can take this home and they can figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, my daughter's 8. We've got this video. She does not like golf. She's a basketball player, whatever. And she hates putting. And in 5 minutes, the first time she used this machine, she could tell me whether her club face was open or closed. Right? If she hit the right gate, well, I guess she's left-handed. So if she hit the left gate, she's like, Dad, my club face was open. She hit the right gate, my club face was closed. That's pretty hard to teach an 8-year-old.
Kidding. Yeah, no,
right?
Yeah. Again, that is why I like this thing, because every lesson you're going to go to, you're going to spend your astronomical amount of money for the lesson, and then the teacher is going to give you all this information and say, so you got to do this, and then you need to go and practice this. And I can't tell you how many times I'm at my home club and I'm seeing people who have taken lessons, oftentimes with me, who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing whatsoever.
Makes you feel really good about yourself?
I actually go, while I walk past them, I'm like, look, if you just want to give me money, I'd have it. Please do. I mean, it'd make our life way easier. So this makes homework appropriate. I mean, it's a
Yes, and it gives you an immediate grade, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for the data. So there's I think there's so many cool things that have come from this, whether philosophies of people that when they're hitting the left gate, so their club face is closed, teachers telling them, all right, let's try to hit the right gate, right? Let's try to purposely open our club, our putter face, and then we can learn that we can manipulate, right? You can control these things. This is how it feels. So there's a million ways to skin the cat here, and I don't even think I've thought of half of them.
Well, that's the beauty about it. And I'm going to sign us off with this.
Okay.
for some reason here in the modern day game, and this podcast was released in 2024, but the hands have been vilified in the game. If you're watching golf instruction throughout it, everyone's trying to eliminate hand action and trying to, cut out excess wrist movement and stuff. The truth is, all of the greats have wonderful hands, and they use their hands appropriately and at the right time. If you're trying to cut your hands out of the thing, you're going to be the least athletic human being in the world, that I can promise you. Now I'm going to get a bunch of hate from X and stuff like that. So let's say goodbye, shall we?
All right. Hey, this has been an honor, and thank you so very much.
Fantastic. I appreciate you, David. This thing's tremendous. I appreciate you sharing. Thank you.
All right. Pure.golf, Mark 25.